seems like forever. I sure miss you, gal.
Adam is going, I love you, Mama.
I love you too, Adam. I miss you.
He's saying, I miss you too, but I was along the ride, he says. I was with you the whole time when you were traveling around.
Oh, I bet you were. I could feel you there with those whales.
Oh, yeah. He's saying, isn't it awesome how they, in a way, he says, when you look at them, you can feel the strength and you can feel the unity that they have with Mother Nature. And it just, it's almost like it x-rays out of them and you just get overwhelmed with this feeling of awe, he says, and they have such a strength, those animals, he says, and they have such a great connection that we could learn a lot more than what we're doing right now, he says. If we could pick those brains, we would learn how to use a bigger part of our brain.
No kidding, huh? They are magnificent creatures. There's nothing like spending time with whales. Just amazing.
It's on my bucket list. I've never seen a whale in life, so it's on my to-do list for me.
Get on over here, girl. I would love to take you to British Columbia. That would be so much fun. Your girls would love it, and I know just the place. Let's put that on my bucket list too. Okay, yay!
Together next to swimming with dolphins. That's another one of mine, and I'd love to go and feel the energy of these animals and see if I could communicate with them, on a mental level. So I'd love to do that. So yes, this is all yet to come. I know it. I'm manifesting.
There's a place here to do that as well. Got to get you over here.
Oh, really? In California?
Yes.
They have that over there?
In Vallejo, you can swim with dolphins.
Oh, great. I'd love to do that.
That's wonderful. Who do we have with us today? I can see the energy popping behind you.
Well, Adam's all dressed up. He's got cowboy style on today. He's got the guns and he's kind of walking. I don't know what he's doing, but like with his legs wide open, he's going, well, Mama, today we got John Wayne.
Is he going to say something like, howdy, Pilgrim, this town ain't big enough for both of us?
I don't know, but he sure as hell likes to dress up, your Adam. He's always acting, and he's always like portraying this character, and it's just funny that how everybody just kind of walks in, and the guests. It's like he adjusts himself to the guests, and I wish I could just take a mental picture and send it to you every time on what he looked like, but he just. It's really over-exaggerated.
Oh, I can see it because, the interesting thing is when they cross over from here, their personality is intact.
Yeah, I think it's great. And was he always that goofy and it was funny the other day because I was talking to Eric. What was it about? I think it was about my daughter, and all of a sudden, I hear Adam come in and say, hey, I know that too, You can ask me, I'm so used to talking to Eric that sometimes I forget that Adam's there as well, that Adam's guiding me as well. It's just funny how he just kind of walks in and he'll just kind of interrupt the conversation and go, hey, I'm here too,
Yeah, he gets excited sometimes. He wants to be known, but he knows he will be because he just wants to help more people. But that's going to happen. I'm busy with the book, and it'll get out there, and it'll happen. And he'll be able to help more people.
And everybody will get to know what a real goof he really is. And, he's a good-hearted goof who liked to make people laugh, although inside he wasn't always feeling that great. He would, it's like he would deal with that insecurity by turning to humor, by turning to, hey, let's make it ridiculous.
Absolutely.
just to make him feel better, and just to your energy when you would goof off and he, you would respond, that energy, he would use that, for himself to feel good. So, and he's still the same way. He feels completely at peace, and he feels completely acceptable of all that is. So he really feels like, he's found his spot. He's found his purpose. But the goofiness, that I don't think it's going to fade away. He just likes to act like an idiot. I'm sorry, Adam, but you do.
He does, and he made himself happy by making other people happy.
He kind of reminds me of, the old style of comedians.
The old vaudeville.
Slapstick and stuff. That's what his energy always brings forward. Like, I always think of that when I connect with him. Like, he's gonna go either any time that I'm already done.
Or beep 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 on your head, like what? Like the Three Stooges. But think about his other aspect, Babajan Chopin. I mean, that's
same thing.
He loves to
dress up and make people laugh, and silly faces, and and silly costumes, and he was I mean, I love the fact that he that we know that was him as well, because if you look at them, they are so similar in so many ways.
They are.
It's really cool.
It's like you've got a circle that's Babajan, a circle that's Adam. There's a lot of overlap in those circles. Babajan had a happier life. Adam's not as much. And when the energies are present that make us feel expansive, and we're our biggest, happiest, most joyful selves, Adam didn't have enough of that.
Yeah. Well, Adam is saying that in those lives, because they were simultaneously in the same time zone. Mm-hmm. They were not the same age, of course, but they were pretty similar when we looked at time frame.
Right.
But it's almost like, they were the same person, but it's like they were split in half, and one of the halves was there to experience, the feeling not good in life, feeling, kind of like a fish out of water, kind of going through the negative side of it. And it's like the other half went into, being the same way, being exactly the same goofball, but succeeding with it. So in a way, he's kind of making me feel like, they were one person, but at both ends, trying to experience, the extremes, because one was extremely successful for really, he was not that great of a singer, and really he was not that great of an actor, but, he did it anyway because of his personality and because of his positivity that he expressed.
Absolutely.
And then Adam kind of had to, unfortunately, experience the other side of that. And in that, he says, we as it, and that doesn't happen a lot, he says, but as two different people being connected with one soul, we experienced both ends in two different lives. Most people will experience the both ends in one life, in one person, where you go through the downs and then you experience the up, or you go through the ups and then you experience the downs. You always have the yin and the yang. For us, we experienced it simultaneously, but in two different bodies. And that's kind of rare, he says. It doesn't happen a lot.
Very interesting. Well, you guys must have planned it that way, but I'll tell you what, it does give me joy to be able to see Adam's personality when I look at these YouTube videos of Babajan Chopin. I mean, you can see that personality, and it gives me joy to see that he got to do that as him. It's so much fun.
It's great. He's going, and it's even for you. He says, "Mama." He's going, "Mama." Mama.
That's what he called me, Mama.
Oh, yeah. It's just Mama.
Never got too old to call me Mama.
He said, when you look at his videos, when you close your eyes, just the energy of the videos, you immediately feel it's me.
Oh, I do. I do feel it's you.
So that's always good to have, he says.
That's why I wish his friends and loved ones would watch him. You can't not feel him.
Yeah.
And they may one day. And it'll be a fun surprise if they decide to do that.
He says they will.
Okay. Nice.
John Wayne is going, hello, ma'am.
Hello. Hello, John. Thank you so much for coming.
He's saying, you're welcome. He feels like a very calm person. He doesn't feel like he's in a rush or anything. He just feels like, yeah, we'll just take our time. But he does feel like a good person. He does feel like an honest person. Sorry, John, but I never really watched your movies. I'm not a big Western fan. So, and I think I didn't really, I was born after he died, so I'm not one part of the generation that grew up with this, with his character. So, to me, he seems like a very tall, a very good-hearted person. Like he's just going, thank you. That's what I tried to be.
I've frozen asleep.
Huh?
Look at my face.
I know, but you look gorgeous no matter
Oh my gosh.
I don't know why he's been. I think this is Adam who keeps doing this because
he does.
Been on like every time.
He does every time. Well, just please don't ever freeze my face in such a horrible expression that I can't deal with it. I'm just pretending like you can't see me.
Adam is saying, "What? I don't know about anything. It's not me." He's just pretending his nose is bleeding. But I've noticed that this has been happening every single time, and not just with me, with Allison as well. So something's going up, Adam. Well, John is just saying he just wants to say thank you for inviting him in. And he just kind of feels like he's not really sure what he should talk about. I'm like, okay, well.
He can say anything he'd like. You know, what we do with our Chillin' with Adam is we invite people on the other side to come through and share with us what they want to share. We don't have an agenda for the format. We don't have questions we want to pick your brain for. I mean, sometimes we do, but we want to know, what do you want to share with us? One of the things we're curious about is how you met Wyatt Earp and his influence on you.
Well, you say he met him. Let's just say this. I've always been fascinated, he says, by Western heroes, and I've always been fascinated by history. He's saying, you have to understand, when I grew up, my father, he says, loved me very much, but he was not always successful in what he tried to do, is what he's making me feel. And he's giving me the feeling that his mom was a very demanding woman. He says, my mom was very controlling. She really was obsessed with moving higher up in the hierarchy. She wanted, she wanted the wealth. She wanted the fame. She wanted the connections. But my father tried his best in everything that he did. He was a pharmacist, but because of health problems, the business would fail and they would go bankrupt. And that would not please my mother. So there was a lot of fighting. There was a lot of arguing. And he's saying that when I came into the world, she almost saw me as a curse. She saw me as another hassle that's going to keep them down financially, that was going to cost money. And again, almost like I was going to stop her from becoming, all that. And so in a way, my mother resented me. My whole life, we never had a good relationship, but my father adored me. My father loved me very much. And so, in a way, I looked up at my father because he did try to always do the right thing. He did try to help others while he was not doing so well himself. So he was my example of what was righteous and what was true and what was compassion, while my mother gave me the complete different perspective. And I did not want to be like my mother. I wanted to be like my father. And so, as he's saying, as I grew up, I started to really, you start reading comic books, and you start hearing all these stories about, the old Western days and the heroes and people who would go out of their bounds to help a lady in distress and all of that. And so I got really fascinated by that. And me and my family, we moved a couple of times because of the bankruptcy. We had to move from Iowa, he says, to, he's showing me California, where we lived in a farm that was owned by my grandfather, but it was not fun to live there. I hated living there. There was no electricity, no running water. It was really back to basics. My mother hated it. Fights would get worse and worse. And he's saying after 2 years, we moved again, and we moved to Glendale, is what he's saying.
Okay.
And that's where he kind of picked up on, hey, Wyatt Earp lives in the neighborhood somewhere. And so he's making me feel that he was he's giving me the age around 10, okay, when he actually kind of looked it up in secret. He says, I didn't tell anybody I was going there, but he's making me feel like he kind of went over there and knocked on his door. And at first, he was kind of mean.
Wyatt was mean? Oh, wow.
Yes, he thought I was just there to pester him or something, because, there's this little kid all by himself knocking on the door. And so he did seem kind of, he scared me a little bit, because he's like, what do you want?
Yeah.
He's making me, he showed me how he kind of leaped back a step.
Oh, yeah.
And he just said, I've heard and read about you, and, I'm just interested in hearing your side of the story. I just want to hear you. How was it in those days? I was extremely interested on how it felt to be in that time zone, in the, in those days where there was, cowboys roaming around and danger and guns. And I was very fascinated by all of that, and the ladies and everything. So, he just wanted to, hear some stories from him. And so eventually he did allow me to come in, and he would call me boy.
Boy?
Boy. Come on in, boy. And he's saying he didn't say that much. He only shared a few things. I got to ask a few questions. Mm-hmm. It did feel that he kind of appreciated that I wanted to hear his version, but at the same time, he was very distant towards me. And so I went home with some stories, and I was extremely happy about it, and I wrote it all down in my book. He says,
come here, Griffin.
And, over time, he says, I went to school, and I was kind of a loner at first, but once I got to high school, I started to really take care of myself. I started to really understand that in order for me to be accepted and in order for me to, I wanted to exceed my father. I wanted to do better. In order for me to achieve that I really needed to try hard, that I really needed to take care of myself. So, I became very athletic, he says. And in that, I was very tall. I started kind of going over the rest of the class. So I was like the tallest one in there.
How tall was he eventually?
He's given me like 1.93 meters.
Wow.
So that would be about 6'4" or something like that. So yeah, I guess he just became more confident because he was more of a loner at first because they were moving and things like that. And so in high school, he's just making me feel like he kind of became more confident, like the sporty guys.
Right.
Also because he was that big, people would go, "Oh, don't mess with him." He's kind of huge.
Right.
And he's saying, because I was a very well-mannered boy, young man, he says, I was very well-mannered, and I was very polite, and, I started to become good-looking, he says. I kind of grew into that.
Yeah.
And because I did have a very athletic body, women started to flock towards me, he says. I did like that attention. I will have to admit, I liked the attention of women. Mm-hmm. And so he's saying over time, I actually got a scholarship in football. He had a scholarship in football. He's showing me, the leather. He has like a leather helmet.
A leather helmet, yes.
And he's just showing me how he's running around with the ball. He does look very handsome. So he's saying, I thought, yes, my life's going in the right direction. Everything's great. Mm-hmm. And although I wasn't that great at it, he says it was my size that they wanted, I wasn't the fastest one. It wasn't my speed or anything like that, but I was big, and I could stop a lot of people. So I was pretty good at that. But then I got injured, he says, on the shoulder.
Oh, okay.
And they kicked me out of the team. I love, having no money at all. Since I've been used to, my parents never had any money. We're always broke. So back to square one. And at that moment, I did kind of lose a feeling of, oh my God, this is, I just felt like it's not going to work out. I'm taking 2 steps forward and 5 steps back is what it felt like. So I was extremely disappointed. And luckily for me, I did have, it kind of looks like one of the team members, maybe a coach or something like that, went and looked for a job for him, he says.
Okay.
And he actually got him a job at a movie studio, where he was just, he had to fetch for coffee and fetch this and move that. And he just, a lot of running around. He was a big guy, so he would, he wouldn't have any problems moving heavy things. So that's how I started in the movie business, basically by running around for other people.
Just helping out, yeah.
And he's saying I was 17, and there walks Wyatt Earp, just walks in the studio, and he looks at me, and in some way or form, he looks like I recognize this kid, but I don't know from where. Like he didn't remember. Don't remember. This was so many years later.
Right. So they did not meet for the first time at the movie studio.
No, they met before.
Right.
And,
okay, cool.
And so he's saying, I did meet him up there, and I said, hey, remember I came to you, and we just kind of picked up from there. And he's like, oh, right, that was you, and how are you doing? And again, he was still very distant, but at the same time, he seemed pleasantly pleased that he saw me again after all those years. And he was just a person who would walk in. He didn't really do anything there. He just, it's like nobody, it's like everybody was afraid to tell him, no, you can't come in here. They would just see him and go, oh, come in, sir. He had that presence. He
was there as a consultant.
Yeah, and he would just come in and if people, ask for his advice or, give him some tips and stuff like that. And he would just enjoy watching it. And he was always, I guess, hoping that one day his story would be told the way he wanted it to be told.
True story, yeah.
So, but unfortunately it didn't. And, but I guess he figured if I get close, if I'm there every day, they'll think about me and make it. So, but he says, I would get him coffee and, while they were doing their thing, but every now and then he would tell a story again, and he would give me little details. And so, I had a really clear insight of who he was and how things were in those days, and the flair that people had in those days, and he's saying, I eventually in my later work, I used that information that he gave me, and I kind of made it my own. I kind of, it's like I absorbed it, and I, in my mind, when I acted, I was pretending to be Wyatt Earp. That was what I was doing. I was pretending to be this person. I was acting like him, and that's how I created the John Wayne character. Who says
that's very cool, based on Wyatt Earp.
So he's making me feel like they did have a few more years where they communicated on every now and then on this basis. But he says he's very grateful that he got a chance to talk to him, because without him, he wouldn't have been the actor that he was. And he's saying, doing the work that I did, I actually enjoyed it because I felt important. They needed me for something always. You get me this, you get me that. So in a way, although I wasn't the stars, I felt important. I felt like I was part of a group. And that really made me feel good. And he's saying, there was a day, he says, where he's saying, I want you to remember that while I was in that job, in my mind, I always thought, I'm going to be a star. I'm going to do this. I'm going to be a star. Right. So I would send that out constantly. I was convinced that I was going to slowly grow, move up the ladder. Yeah. I was convinced that me being there was just a way for me to observe these other actors. And, it was just a stepping stone to learn by just observing, to learn by looking at them. How do they do it? How do they, and so my whole life, I wanted to prove to myself that I could do this. I wanted to prove to myself that I could be successful, that I could get financial stability, and all of that. And so I did that by manifesting. I did that by keeping in my mind that I'm already a celebrity, that I'm just growing into it still. And so, he's saying, the more I felt comfortable with that idea, the more that, because at first you're like, okay, I want to do that. I'm going to be it. You say it, but the feelings don't always correlate, he says. The emotion is not always there yet. You're still struggling with fear. You're still struggling with doubt. But he's saying over time, I started feeling it as well, because I was so many, every day surrounded by these incredible people, these incredible actors, that I just kind of picked up on their energy, and I was like, yeah, I'm one of them. That's how I would walk around. I'm one of them. I love what I do. And it worked. He says, I manifested getting my first job. And he's saying, I did kind of grow up on the ladder. I went from being a running boy, and then I became like a stunt man, and then I became like an extra where I had like one line. But, I did take it up the ladder, but I never lost.
Hi.
We're back.
What games are you playing, Adam?
I don't know. He's just going.
Uh-oh. Maybe he has a little helper. Is Eric playing games with us today, too? Okay. What mischief have we got going on here?
I don't know. Sorry, my computer. Okay. Can you hear me okay?
Oh, yeah. I can hear you and see you just fine.
Okay. Well, I don't know where it cut off. But basically, what he's saying was that the reason he's telling you this story is because he wants everybody to understand that we all need a goal. We all need something to look forward to. Yep. And he's saying, always the first step in achieving anything in life is completely understanding what you want to achieve. Right. It's about, not thinking, oh, maybe this, maybe that. I don't know. If you go through life thinking, I don't know, then life doesn't know either. Right, the universe doesn't know either what you want. But he's saying, having a goal, having a purpose, having an experience, he says, in your mind to grow towards will always shape your future, will always shape your life and your end result. And so he's saying, for me, I knew that in some way or form, I knew that the only way I could achieve being recognized, and I could achieve feeling good about something that I love doing, because I didn't want to just do anything to survive. I did want to do something that really spoke to me, that really I felt good with. And trust me, he says, being an actor was not my first choice. Really? I actually wanted to become a lawyer. That was my first idea. But that didn't work financially. So, but being surrounded with those actors, it really made me understand why the football career didn't work out, why the lawyer thing didn't work out. It made me understand that, oh, yeah, this is what I want to do. It made it very clear that, okay, I've been put down here for a reason. And once I got that in my heart, he says, I understood that I wanted to reach the top. I wanted to be known for this. And I also wanted to be stable with this. I wanted to have a family, and I wanted to be financially stable and still be able to do what I love doing. And, as these characters, and he's saying, one of my favorite actors, I don't know who this is though, but maybe it's somebody called Harry Caray.
Harry Caray?
Yeah, who is that?
Well, Harry...
He's just showing me a cowboy, like an actor kind of dressed up.
Caray, honestly, I was not that much into Westerns either. I did see some John Wayne movies, but I'm not familiar with Harry Caray.
Yeah, well, people look it up.
Okay.
He's just given me that name. I've never heard that name in my life.
Okay.
But he's saying that was one of his idols. That was somebody that he really looked up to.
Harry Caray, okay.
He wanted to be, like Wyatt Earp, like him.
Okay.
So always keeping that in mind. He's saying, keep in mind, it did take me a very long time to actually get to the spot where I got the recognition. Right. I only got the recognition like right before my death. It took me a very long time. Wow. I did have people's hearts. I did have the compassion and the love of the American people. Recognition from the movie industry. I never got, that little pat on the back saying, hey, you did great, and this is that, and this is that. And you say, looking at my career, it just started with one chance, and that's all it takes.
One chance.
One chance, one opportunity, and then it's up to you, he says, to either take it or walk away. And I recommend to always take it. You never know what it's going to bring. If you're afraid, find a way as to kind of push you, count to 3, 1, 2, 3, just go, just say yes, and then worry about it later. Just give them the right answer first and then worry about it. So don't let fear control you in that moment, because that could be your life defining moment. Just one offer. And for me, that was with John Ford. And he had seen me as an extra. And he's saying that John Ford gave me the opportunity to star as the lead character because he saw something in me. He saw an honesty, of course, a good-looking man, which was always good with the ladies, he says. But there was a sensitivity about me.
Yes,
and that's really attracted him to me, he said. And
Griffey.
He was not an easy man to work with.
John Ford wasn't.
Ford was hard. He was demanding. He could be cruel to you. He could curse at you when you didn't do what he asked you to do. Let's just say that he was so perfectionistic that, he didn't care how he treated you. It just needed to be right. But him pushing me that way really forced me to try all different angles, different directions. And he really pushed me for myself to not just be content, but to thrive for that little bit more, and so in that way, he was a really good teacher. And over time, he kind of became like my second father. He became a person that I would take in confidence if there were problems, and became a really, really good friend, he says. And it was really hard for me to say no to him because he did have that, I say this, you do, okay.
There we go.
It was really hard for me to say no to him, but that's okay, he said, because, I did like working with him. And, that's just how it all started. It started with one movie. And he says, to this day, I still like this movie very, very much. And it was going to be a great success, he says. It was going to be a great success. But he's making me feel like when his first movie came out, he's showing me, what looks to me, I would say, like the Great Depression. It's like,
that was the time period during which the movie came out?
Yeah. He's showing me a lot of poverty, people living out on the streets. And he's saying, we just came out at the wrong time. And not a lot of theaters had the money to buy the movie. So it just wasn't displayed very much. And that's why it didn't do so well. People didn't have money. Theaters didn't have any money. A lot of theaters closed. And it was just the movie just came out at the wrong time. But I do believe that it was a good movie.
Now, is he referring to the first movie he ever made?
He's saying this was the very first one I made.
Okay.
I'm trying to see if I can get a name. I can't get the name. He's just showing me images of it.
Okay. No worries.
He's very young. I would probably say 20s, 22, something like that.
Right. So his point is, though, that the first movie he made came out during the Depression and the theaters couldn't afford to buy it and people couldn't afford to go to the movies.
Yeah, so it just came out at the wrong time. I think he's saying, otherwise, right. I really think that it was going to be a success.
Okay.
Because he's saying, John Ford was an A-class director in
Oh
those
yeah,
days.
he was. Mm-hmm.
And so this would have put me on the map, he says. But unfortunately, well, stuff happens, and it just didn't work out.
Mm-hmm.
And so it did bring me down a little bit, but I decided to not let it get to me.
Good.
And I kept having the image in front of me. I was going to be recognized. This is going to be good. And every day, it was kind of like a mantra, and I would repeat it in my mind every morning when I got up. This is who I'm going to be. This is what's going to happen. He would just repeat it over and over again.
And that's how you do it.
Exactly. He's saying, you need to get it into a routine that whatever you want, you need to at least visualize it once a day and just know it's going, you need to express that, he says. Mm-hmm. You need to feed it, he says. You need to feed it with energy, you need to continuously give the universe a reminder. Remember? This is what I'm going to be. Remember?
That's right. Carry that image in your head and feel.
Keep it you.
As though it already is.
And you also kind of, when I started going back to work, you would walk around like, yeah, I made it. You need to, even if, let's say, he's saying, let me give you an example. He's saying, let's say you want to be a singer.
Okay.
Right? Nowadays, it's really hard to break through. There's so many, competitors out there. They're always looking for something new. Mm-hmm. Let's say you want to be a singer, and as of this moment, you work in a grocery store. Right?
Okay.
He's saying when you go to your work in the morning, you just have to imagine that you're driving to your concert. You're driving to get ready. And he's saying, when you do your job, when you communicate to people, you kind of have to feel like they're there to get your autograph. You're just scanning away. But just think, autograph.
I like it.
It's about carrying it with you and making it yours. And that's how we manifest. It really needs to become part of you. It needs to become part of your energy. And the more intense you can do that, the faster you're going to manifest it. And that's why it's important, because a lot of people do manifest, but it takes them sometimes 30 years, just kind of like me. It takes them 30 years, to really get there, He's saying, for instance, let's say you want to be a train conductor, or you want to be, somebody who punches the tickets on the train. Some people have that, that dream. And right now you're working at a grocery store, just pretend every time you go beep that you're scanning that ticket from that passenger.
Okay.
Beep. Says, there you go. Have a nice ride. Day. Those are ways, he says. You just need to kind of make it your own. And to a point, I did that. To a point, I had a little mantra every morning where I would visualize myself, being appreciated. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And actually, doing what I love doing, and getting recognized for it. And sometimes it just takes us a little bit longer to get there. And that was, in my case, it was a journey. It was a journey to get there. And it was a journey of acceptance for me as well. And so, I did go through doing a lot of B movies, and I did a lot of movies, he says. And he said, I probably did more movies than any other movie star. There was a point, he says, where all I did was work, work, work. And I became a workaholic. I became obsessed with making movies. And these B movies, you have to think about it. In those days, in 3 days, you had a movie. Now it takes years, some stuff, to make one movie. Mm-hmm. Those B movies and those, we had 3 days to book it up. That was it. 3 days to do everything all together. Wow. And so once a month, these movies would come out in the theater, and people really got familiar with my face. And I kind of became this familiar friend, every month, new movie with my face on it, because he's saying, shortly after that, we had World War II. And after the attack of Pearl Harbor, a lot of celebrities, a lot of actors signed up to go to war. And because at that time I was married, I had 4 children, he says. And financially, I wasn't doing that great. Those B movies really didn't make a lot of money.
Right.
I was just kind of, underpaid. I didn't really feel like I wanted to risk leaving my family behind. And a lot of people kind of resented me for that, for not going, but I didn't go to work. I didn't sign up for it. But it did give me a lot of work because all the actors were gone. So in a way, I kind of used that. He's saying, but you got to do what you got to do. And so I made like over 100 movies, he says, in like 5 years. So I made movie after movie after movie after movie, he says. And I became a familiar face with people. And people, because, their sons and their fathers were off to war, in a way, when they saw me and they saw my movies, I think it gave them hope. That Americans are strong, that we were going to overcome this, that in a way I had this appealing toughness, he says. I was tough on the exterior, but I was really soft inside. I had a good heart. I cared about women, and I always wanted to protect them. And I was also, an iconic patriot. I really... in a way, I wanted to project that. I wanted to show the strength of Americans in my performances. I wanted to show the people that we come from a very brave people, although we've been through a lot of things, that, there's still honor in us, and there's still good in us, and there's strength in us. And so I think in a way, that also made people appeal to the roles that I did and the characters that I did, because it just kind of gave them hope. Our boys are going to be fine. They're cowboys. They're going to make it. They're strong.
That's right.
And so I think that really had an impact also on the American people, but also had an impact on me. Because if you think about it and says, I was not the greatest actor in the world, but it was the energy that I sent out that made people fall in love with me. They'll say I wasn't the greatest actor, but I did become the symbol of, American strength and tradition and honesty and truth. So in that way, I'm really proud that I got to do that. Although my life was far from perfect, he said. I wanted to be the perfect person. I didn't like liars, so I was very open and honest about everything myself. And I wanted to be the perfect husband, and I wanted to be the perfect father. And because of my fear of not being financially okay, because I grew up in that and I knew how it would destroy people's lives, I've seen it.
Right.
I would work, and I would really become a workaholic. I felt I did like the work. I felt structured there. I felt like there was discipline there, and I knew what was expected of me, and I knew the outcome. But I did neglect my family, unfortunately, not because I wanted to. But just because of the fear that was haunting me at that time, and that has haunted me my whole life. I did have this extreme fear of not being okay, and unfortunately, my wife and I became strangers, and I always loved her, and I always respected her, and in a way, I might have had demands on my wives that weren't very honest towards them as well, because I guess I wanted to be the perfect American with the perfect wife, that when I come home, she cooks dinner and she takes care of you and so on. In that way, I was very old-fashioned, I guess. I was very conservative, wife is there for you, and I take care of her, she takes care of me. And so I did always expect her that when I did come home, which was, not a lot, that she was going to be all like, hey, how's it going? But she had her own needs and wants as well.
Yeah.
And eventually, I kind of ran away from that, because when I did come home, she wasn't happy. Why are you not home more? Why can't you do this? Why can't you do that? So, I did like hanging out with the guys. I had some friends that I would hang out with. I loved doing, fishing and games and, playing cards and, just manly stuff. I liked hanging out with the guys.
Sure.
It did destroy several marriages, unfortunately. But I don't regret any of them because they made me experience love in some way or form. Although I couldn't sustain it, although I never could hold on to it, I did try. And I gave it my best. And he's saying in some aspects, I was too conservative, is what he's saying. He's making me feel like he had certain political ideas as well that were extremely conservative. But he's saying, I just wanted to keep that American dream picture in my mind. And unfortunately, when things start changing in the world, women came up for their rights, and there was, in those days, you had colored people coming up for their rights and so on. So he was going through a time where a lot of things were changing. You had JFK and, all these things were changing, and that kind of scared him because he felt like, he's saying it kind of felt like I was losing touch of, what in my eyes was America, Many changes too fast. And for him, that really made him speak out his mind about what he thought. And he's saying, looking back at it now, I might have, I would have changed certain things that I did say. But at that time, he says, for me, it was almost like I was losing touch with, with that perfect picture, the perfect American picture, he says. And he says, not a lot of people might understand that, but I really held on to that. That was what I wanted, that was, I didn't want all these changes. I wanted to keep things the way they were, and I just wanted to continue that way. So, in some way or form, that did cause a lot of stress to me. That did cause a lot of frustration for me. And so let's just say that achieving my goals wasn't always easy. And we do have ups and downs in life. And although you want to be the perfect husband and you want to be the perfect family man, it just doesn't always work out. But I never hated my wives. I never resented them for for asking for a divorce. I understood. But at the same time, I was also disappointed more in myself that I couldn't sustain a family, something that I always wanted to do. Right. But I had great kids. I loved my children. I had a lot of children, but they were all worth it. They are incredibly talented people. And he's saying, seeing all my grandchildren coming and, it just felt like I was passing on a part of me to a new generation. And in that aspect, I was extremely proud being a father. And I was extremely proud that my children did feel loved by mother and father. So in that aspect, I did feel like I, that I succeeded in giving them a good home in some way or form. I did I did move around a lot. I did disappear a lot for recordings, she said. But I tried to take them with me as much as I could. But, as the kids get older, eventually they want to do their own thing.
Right.
They want to go with dad to the studios all the time. So, but, I am proud of who they are. And I'm proud of myself that I gave it my best when it came to family, and that I always just try to take care of everybody. So in that aspect, I don't think I can regret anything. And he's saying the irony about the whole thing is that I did achieve what I wanted to do, which was being an actor, but I never achieved the financial stability. Because that fear went with me wherever I went. And a lot of people think you make movies and you're rich and you have this and you have that.
Right.
And you say, I went bankrupt several times.
Really?
Not just because of not getting enough money, but I trusted some people with my finances that made really bad investments and lost a lot of money. And then I also made bad investments later on, he said, in investing in movies who really flopped, who really bombed. And so I just went into bankruptcy and then trying to get back out of it. And right as I'm trying to get out of it, another thing fails and another thing fails. And so I really had extreme ups and downs in my career, in the finances, and in the family life. But he's saying, I don't regret anything, because I always stayed true to what I felt was right. And I always stayed true to what I wanted to do. And I think in that aspect, I'm really proud of what I accomplished, he says. I did have a very sad experience when he's talking about his brother. Does he have a brother? He's talking about his brother dying of lung cancer. Okay. So his brother was very close to him, he says, because they worked together. He was kind of like a producer of some sort.
Okay.
He's showing me. So they worked together on movies and things like that. Yeah. And he was my younger brother, but he died before me. That was really hard. Yeah, I was really heartbroken when that happened, he said. It was a really hard time for me. And I had already, he's making me feel like he also had lung cancer, and he had also gone through it. But he overcame the lung cancer. They removed his lung, he says. He's just making me feel like they removed part of his lung.
So John and his brother both had lung cancer.
We both had lung cancer, and he's saying that cancer came back for him. So although he overcame the lung cancer, he's making me feel like the cancer came back later. But not in his lungs this time, but in his stomach. He's showing me his belly. And he's making me feel that, in a way, that I caused it myself. So did my brother. Why? He says because we would hold on to certain fears. We would hold on to trying to control everything as well. In my life, I did try to control every direction I went into. I tried to control my wife. And, I kind of had whatever I said, I wanted people to follow that, especially in my home. So he did have a little bit of a control issue, and he's making me feel like, they never let it go. They never surrendered. And that was part of the spiritual lesson behind it, was to just, it's something that you need to accept. And then you just go with the flow and you try to overcome that. And he's saying another aspect of it was, he's saying, well, my smoking didn't help. He's going, I was a chain smoker. I
Yeah.
smoked a lot. And then he's saying what smoking did was, although I was a very strong person, but smoking kind of brought my immune system down.
Okay.
It dropped the immune system. And he's saying that when they would film in certain areas, he's making me feel like there was not a healthy area to be in, that there was radiation in the neighborhood, and things like that. Yeah, he's making me feel like there was one movie where they actually did, he's showing me, one of those cloud things, this atomic testing things, and they were actually very close to it, just recording a movie. And so a lot of their people, everybody who was working on the movie was exposed, I guess, to the radioactivity. And he's making me feel like a lot of people died of cancer from that group. And unfortunately, his brother was there as well, and so was he. So he's making me feel like that has a big part of it as well, that they were exposed to radioactive areas. In those days, people didn't think that, this radioactivity was spread. They would just do the testing and go, okay, boom.
Well, you go into the boonies, right? Way in the boonies, way, way far from everything to do this testing, right? The military would do that. And then, of course, that's exactly where you go to film the cowboy movies, right?
Yeah, and it just made me feel like, they were close. And he's just saying, there were even other places, a lot of times we were filming in Arizona is what he's making me feel. And
right, there's a lot of military testing there, White Sands Missile Range.
And he's showing me how even people who live there are exposed to it, because he's showing me how there's these dust storms or like sandstorm kind of things. And so all this radioactive sand just gets blown around.
And you breathe it.
So
right.
You put it in and there, you're infected basically. So he's just saying that, a lot of factors kind of led to it. But he did feel, because he's making me feel like, a lot of people died before him from that group. It's like, one after another would have cancer or something, they would die unexpectedly. And he's saying, I kind of felt in a way responsible for that, because I noticed that, it was a lot of people from a certain movie that, and I kind of felt like we put them there. And, but he's saying, it is what it is, and there's nothing that we could have done about it. We didn't know.
Yeah, you didn't know.
We had no idea that was what happening. But he's saying, I remember looking up and seeing this big cloud while we were filming. In the distance, there was this big cloud going, oh, look, there's a bomb. So, unfortunately, I did not have a pain-free death, he says. I did have a lot of problems after getting a lung removed. I didn't have a lot of air anymore. My stomach was eventually removed, and it was just, I became extremely ill, extremely weak. And I'm just glad that I got to experience holding one Oscar in my hand right before I passed away. So he's just making me feel like, although he had to wait for that moment of standing there, he would do it all over again. He doesn't regret the journey it took him to get there, because, and even the illness, he says, even the illness taught me, that we just have to, accept things, and it just is what it is, and complaining about it won't get you anywhere. So I was not a complainer. I wouldn't even tell my wife at that time that, oh, I'm feeling like this and I'm so sick, and I would stay strong. He's saying I was very weak at the end, but I still wanted to show people that I'm here. And I did go to the Oscars to hand over an Oscar to somebody else. And I did cover up some stuff, but don't tell some people that. I would he's making me feel like he was wearing a bodysuit underneath his suit because he was so thin. He was so skinny, and he didn't want people to see that, although you could see it in his face. He says, and still to that point, I wanted people to see me as a strong, independent American. But, I wanted to do that. I didn't want to die, in a bed waiting, I didn't want to wait for it. So I did do things until the last minute. And I did hide my pain because I didn't believe in complaining. If you don't like something, you do something about it. That's just how I kind of lived my life. And he's saying, I don't know what else to tell you. I enjoyed the journey. I enjoyed the people who adored me, and I enjoyed communicating with them and being an example in some way or form because I was meaningful in every person's life in some way or form. People take out of your energy what they need, and I'm glad that I was a part of that. So my only advice to everybody is, know what you want and live it every day, even if you don't have it yet. Live it, act on it, act like you already have it, and be patient. If you're not receiving it right away, then there's a reason for it. Right. That's because you still have to go through a journey to learn from it. So don't get discouraged when you don't see the results right away. And just accept that the journey to your success is the most important journey after all, he says. So
that's true. It's the journey.
Yeah, it's the journey, he says. And just enjoy the people that you meet along the way.
What were some of the highlights for you? Some of the things that brought you the most pleasure? Maybe your favorite movie or your favorite people to work with, your favorite leading lady?
Oh, he's saying, well, all my children, my wives, my children, meeting them. I had a really, really good friend. He showed me a redhead, Maureen O'Hara.
Oh.
He's saying, I loved her. She was like my best friend, but like my guy friend. Like she wasn't ladylike. She was just like, hey, what's up? Let's go fishing. She would hang out with the guys. She was just like this beautiful, very strong-minded, and to me, I mean, I never saw her as a love interest. She was just extremely close to me, and I could tell her anything and still hang out with her. She was just like one of the guys. So I really appreciated her friendship and her love. And he's saying, he's saying just being able to get the recognition that I've always wanted was a great moment. One of the best moments, he says, that I experienced, because it wasn't just about getting this little statue. For me, it was about years and years and years of hard work.
Lifetime achievement.
Yeah, it was just about finally getting the recognition from the movie industry. Right. I got the recognition from the people, right, but I never really got the recognition of the movie industry. And so it just made me feel like I was a part of the actor group. I was a part of that that society, let's just say it that way, he says. And I know that sounds very superficial maybe, but for me, this is what I had been living for.
Not really. You truly were a Hollywood icon. You were the image of the American cowboy.
He's just making me feel like he waited for this for so long to finally, have manifested what you have been trying to manifest for that long. It's just a moment of relief and a moment of joy, he says. Yeah. And, I was I didn't expect it anymore. I kind of had given up after a while.
Aww.
But somewhere in my heart, I kind of knew that one day there will be recognition, and it did come while I was still alive, so I was extremely happy about that. Um, but yeah, I had a lot of wonderful things in life. I met incredible people. I had incredible children, incredible wives, all very different, but all very unique in their own way. I did experience, friendship and, being able to do what I love doing. And he's saying, I'm just happy that I was a part of history, that I'm just that. He's saying, what can I say? It was a good run. It wasn't always easy, but it was a good run. And I'm very pleased with the results that I had,
You made some amazing movies. What was it like working with Lee Marvin? This guy may not be familiar to you, but he was sort of a cowboy comic. He was lots of fun, and when he was in the movie, there was guaranteed humor. And of course, John was the straight man.
That was, as soon as you said his name, I started giggling, and that's because as soon as you said the name, I could feel the giggly energy of this person.
Yeah.
But he just feels more like a goofball,
Yes.
making silly faces and things like that.
Yes.
Saying stupid stuff. That's what it sounds like.
Yes. Yes. He would add that element.
Yeah, he's just making me feel like, it was a pleasure working with him, is what he's making me feel. He also became a good friend, he says.
And what about Raquel Welch?
Let's just say he's going well. I respected her, but in a way, sometimes I would clash.
Well, you had an amazing, wonderful, illustrious career. I mean, and in my mind, as somebody who grew up watching movies, in the 60s and 70s, you are the first person that comes to mind when I think of cowboy movies, like True Grit. Amazing. I mean, you created The Quiet Man. I mean, gosh.
Did they make a thing of that? Did they make a new version of that? I think I've seen the new version. Sorry, Wayne, I'm gonna have to watch your version.
So can you tell me, how did he get the nickname the Duke?
Really silly. How I got the name. He's saying as a little boy, I had a dog named Duke.
Okay.
And I love that dog. I love that dog, and he was my best friend. And I would take him anywhere. And so sometimes I would stroll around town, and he loved to go look at, looks like firemen. He loved to go look at the firemen training and all of that, getting their gear ready. And so he was just kind of wandering, start looking around, and apparently they didn't seem to mind. And he says at one time, my dog kind of went inside the place, and I was looking for him, going, Duke, where are you at, Duke? Trying to get him away, because I was like, I'm going to get in trouble. And so I didn't get in trouble. He said they actually thought it was funny. And because I came over so many times, and they didn't know what my name was, but they knew what the dog's name was, because I was calling him. They called me Big Duke and Little Duke.
Oh my gosh, how
and
cute.
So I got stuck with that name since I was, very small, since I was very young, and I just became, I just became Duke, he said. So it's really a silly story, he says, but it just shows you how much you can get stuck with something so silly.
That is very cute. I love that nickname.
Well, it's named after his dog.
Story. There we go.
It's hilarious.